I have the honor of introducing Bill Beagan.
Beagan.
Beagan!
Yeah.
Oh, good start, eh, Bob? And Bill was born right here in Parry Sound in December of 1937. And after he left Parry Sound, he went into the Canadian military, which served as foundation for his administrative and leadership career in hockey. In 1967, you may have read on our website that Scotty Morrison selected him. Scotty was the referee-in-chief of the NHL, and he invited Bill to officiate in the NHL, which he did for the next 2 years. And then Clarence Campbell supported his appointment in 1969 to be the president of the international, not the president, the commissioner of the International Hockey League. And while he was commissioner, he was also then director of the Amateur Hockey Association of the United States for 5 years, 1971, 1976. And during 1976 Winter Olympics in Innsbruck, Austria, he represented the United States as the officiating supervisor for the Amateur Hockey Association of the U.S. He then went on to relaunch the Eastern Hockey League for 2 years, which he ran for 2 years, and then briefly was the commissioner of the Ontario Hockey League. I'm sure that'll be an interesting
42 days.
42 days, so that'll be an interesting discussion. But more successfully, in 1981, he became general manager, part owner of the IHL Toledo Goaldiggers. Now that isn't one of the most amazing names for a hockey team. I don't know what it is.
It's got nothing to do with making money.
That team was very successful. 2 successive IHL championships and 2 Turner Cup championships in the playoffs in 3 years. In '85, he became commissioner of the CCHA, which is the Central Collegiate Hockey Association, and that's a hockey-only affiliate of the NCAA. And he was commissioner of that league for 13 years, during which time he was instrumental in bringing national TV coverage to the collegiate playoff games through cable television. He also developed players and referees to go on to play professionally in the NHL. And upon his retirement, he must have done a pretty good job, because the CCHA named the Best Player Award for the playoffs in Bill's honor. And his hometown, and perhaps that's the most important thing in a person's life, is how the people back home think about you. They inducted Bill into the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame in 2004, which is the same year that our speaker last night, Dave Burrows, was inducted. So it kind of goes full loop. So what we're going to do for the next hour or so, I've got some questions, but I don't want to be the only one asking questions. I'm going to kick it off, but as we talk, if you have a question, feel free. Bill will field questions, and we'll just have a dialogue for the next hour. So the first one that I want to ask is just, having grown up...
Oh, could I make a comment before? Whatever happens today, nothing could have been better than finding out that Jim Devellano is here today. Honestly, I'm going to embarrass you, Jimmy, but in 1981, when I got into the hockey business and became a 50% owner of Toledo Goaldiggers, first of all, I called Jimmy. I didn't know Jimmy at the time. I called Bill Torrey, and Torrey was the general manager of the Islanders, as you'll know, and Jimmy ran the team in Indianapolis. Correct, Jimmy?
That's correct.
And I needed help because I only kept 8 players from the previous team. 8 players. And Jimmy gave me Peter Steblik, Lorne Mulliken, the goalie, and if you can believe it, Scott Howson, who scored over 100 points. And we went on to win 2 successive regular season championships and 2 Turner Cup championships. And Jimmy, I'll always be indebted to you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So what I wanted to know was, you grew up in the 40s, the early 50s. You must have been playing hockey here at Parry Sound. What role did hockey play for you, and how far did you go in competitive hockey as a player?
Well, it kept me out of training school in Boltonville, Ontario. Hockey gave me the legs to stand on, and really the wings to fly. And I flew out of Parry Sound as a 16-year-old after spending 3 or 4 years in the organization. And I joined the Canadian Army. And that foundation, playing for the Legion, coached by Laurie McClure, and the Pee Wee team, coached by Bill Langford, is something that I'll be forever indebted to. So, Parry Sound, you know, as you know, Orr and all the other guys, you know, we play on the Big Sound. You fire a puck out past Graham's Channel, it'd end up in Saginaw or Saginaw. But anyway, but that's my answer to that.
So you left here. You said you joined the Army when you were 16.
16.
And you served 13 years in the military. Many Canadians haven't taken the opportunity to be in the military. It obviously served you very well. Can you talk a bit about what roles you took on and how that prepared you for future roles?
As a 16-year-old, I finished grade 10 in high school. We come from a very poor family, and my father was 66 years old at the time, and he was 48 when I was born, so there really wasn't much going on. So I saw an ad in the Toronto Star, and it said, you know, a way to a fine future. I had to get my parents to sign off, and I had to get a minister and the chief of police, George Doolittle. He was very happy to sign. And I spent the next 2 years in a very intensive 2-year training. 06:15 up in the morning, Ravalli, and lights out at 11. I grew 6 inches in 2 years. Got my second degree education diploma. Learned how to fire every firearm that they had on the base, including and not limited to 3.5 high explosive anti-tank weapons, machine guns, grenades, and after that training, I was sent to the Middle East, in Egypt. I spent a year in Egypt, and then after that I came back I was posted to National Defense Headquarters in Ottawa, and in '63 I went to Germany. I was just getting into officiating. This is a good segue. I was just getting into officiating, and Huey McLean, who was with the Ontario Hockey Association, he saw me and he liked me and he put me in a lot of games, and he gave me a schedule for the 1963-64 season, but that was interrupted by the Army sending me to Germany. So, and of course I was there when President Kennedy was assassinated. And following my tour of duty in Ottawa is when I had been communicating with Mr. Clarence Campbell for about a year, and I continued to communicate with him when I was transferred to the United States NORAD through Washington, D.C., the Canadian Embassy at 2240 Massachusetts Avenue in Washington. And they sent me to Colorado Springs, and then I was detached posted to Madison, Wisconsin, where I got into some serious refereeing. I was refereeing University of Wisconsin hockey, and I was refereeing in the U.S. Hockey League. And we stayed in Madison for 2 years, and then we moved up to Duluth for 1 year. And then I'm ready to be commissioned, CFR, commissioned from the ranks, and I got a call from Scotty Morrison, and I had to make a decision, so I signed. They hired four officials in 1967, as you'll recall, Jimmy. That was Brian Lewis, John McCauley, Dave Newell, and myself. So I guess I got off the question, but anyway, I am very indebted to the military. That's where I got all my training and my discipline, and I can say without reservation that hockey is my passion, but the military was my life.
It seems like a big jump to go from officiating in U.S. college to the NHL. Was it as big a jump as it seems?
No. you know the rules, and compared to today, where now you've got 2 referees and 2 linesmen, you got video replay. There was, comparing the pressure back then, even though I said that it was fine, it would be a lot easier today, I think. But it happened, I was sitting in the SIHR building. SIHR is an acronym for Simulated Air-Ground Environment. This is back in the 60s when Vietnam was going on, and I was working in a top secret building, the SIHR building, where we monitored incoming missiles and what have you like that. And the only person in the world who had my phone number would have been my wife. And a call came into the SIHR building, and which was unusual, paging me, and I just assumed that either my mother or father had died or something. But I guess somehow or another, Scotty Morrison got my phone number from my wife, and he called the building. And it was very short, and he said, "Can you be in St. Louis tomorrow night?" So I said to my boss, Lieutenant Colonel Peterson, I said, I've got an opportunity to go to St. Louis and work a pro game. And of course, everybody knew I was officiating. So this U.S. Major pipes up, Ken Lowe. He says, "I'll give you a ride." I said, "Really?" So anyway, I got all suited up. Of course, I'm in the Army. I go down to this pilot says to me, "Have you been checked out in the high altitude chamber?" I said, "I'm an Army guy. I mean, I've never moved more than 3 feet off the ground." He says, "Well, you got to get checked out up to 30,000 feet." So I got checked out to 30,000 feet. I go down to the operations center. I got all the paraphernalia, hat, everything else. We load up into a T-33 jet, and they fly me to St. Louis. Wow. And it was, well, I guess Morrison, so he didn't know me personally, but I guess he had heard from me. And I don't know how many, I know Jimmy Davillano will remember Andy Mulligan. He was a commissioner of the IHL. And I think that Mulligan put Morrison onto me, who contacted me and got me involved. Anyway, I worked the game. Frank and Barry was there. I guess they sent him because they didn't know whether I could officiate at all, but it was a good game. And had Barry give me a per diem list and everything else, and he says, "You're staying at the Forest Park Hotel tonight." I said, "Oh, Mr. Barry, I'm not staying here tonight." He said, "Well, you'll never get out of here tonight." And so Major Lowe, Ken Lowe, walks in. He says, "Bill, how long going to be?" And of course, I had to tell him that I was flying right back to Madison, Wisconsin, and I went to work back in the SIHR building the next day. So
That's a pretty special start. It sounds a bit like you were being groomed, though, because within 2 years, you were commissioner of the IHL.
yeah, well, not to flatter you, but because you are a research group, I'm probably going to say some things and give you some things that I've never ever gave anybody before. But I had a very close relationship with Mr. Campbell. I never called him Clarence in my life. Matter of fact, Jimmy, do you know anybody that ever called Mr. Campbell?
No, it was always Mr. Campbell.
Yeah. Well, he became, we corresponded, and my father died in 1973, and that's when we really connected, 1973. And he became really my surrogate league attorney, and almost like a father figure to me. And I don't know whether I got a little, it wasn't a little emotional because it's, I've never told anybody about the connection that we have, but I'm going to share a letter that he sent me back when you're all researchers, would you all remember the Sky Shops affair?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a letter here from Mr. Campbell in response to a letter that I sent him. And I never shared it with anybody, but I'd like, with your permission, to give it to the people. So, without any question, Clarence Campbell, Mr. Clarence Campbell, you know, a diplomat, a soldier, a lieutenant colonel, and that's in the Armored Corps in World War II, born in Saskatchewan in 1905, died in 1984, but he just truly an underrated man, and I just loved him. Go ahead.
Do you want to read the letter, Mr. Campbell? That'd be nice.
Well,
Or is it too long to?
Yes, I will. I had written him a letter, and this is when the Sky Shops affair was on, and it was very serious, and it was causing him to be very, very sick. I wrote him a letter and I said, this is a personal and confidential letter, April the 27th, 1976. I hope you don't mind. Dear Mr. Campbell, I find it very difficult and trite to express to you in words my feelings for the embarrassment which has befallen you as it relates to recent allegations of misconduct which have appeared in newspapers throughout the country in recent weeks. It has been said, Mr. Campbell, that it's the storm that proves the soul of ships. You have taught me not to expect to go through life unruffled, on an even keel, like a toy boat on a backyard pool. Your ship strains presently and groans and gives reeling before the buffeting of gales and roaring seas. But you will keep your course and make port. I am confident of that. Whatever the final result of this recent embarrassment, Mr. Campbell, please remember that every impulse, every intention, every deed, every word, good or bad, is known to the judge of all men. And he sits competent to pass sentence without the necessity of an attempt at justification. When you are judged, it will be recorded, not that what you have done for yourself in your lifetime, or that dies with you, but what you have done for others in the world, and that remains and is immortal. God bless you and Mrs. Campbell, and be of good spirits, for you have nothing to fear. Your friend, Bill Beagan. He responded on April the 29th, 1976. I have your letter of April the 27th, in which you express confidence in my character and integrity with respect to my current travail in the so-called Sky Shops affair. For this, I am most grateful, because in times like these, the good opinions of your friends and associates is a major source of morale. I am sure that you realize that this affair has many potential overtones, which it would be easy to refute. However, Providence demands that these be endured in order to prejudice our legal defenses, not to prejudice our legal defenses. I am confident that I will be vindicated in the end, but I am not so naive as to think that the resulting damage to my reputation is not great. Hoping you again, wishing you again, I remain yours sincerely, Clarence. I wanted to relate that to you only because, as I said, you are research people, and I just don't think Mr. Campbell deserved the credit that he's deserved. So I have a copy of my letter and his letter, and if anyone would like it, you're welcome to take it. So.
Thank you very much. You had a very intense relationship with him. That's insight that we would never otherwise get. Thank you.
That's right.
So when you took over the IHL, I've read that in the late 1960s and through the 70s, that the quality and the caliber of play of the IHL grew and became on par with that of the American Hockey League. And I have to think that you had something to do with it. Can you give your observations about
well, I was a conduit. People like Jim Devellano had a lot to do with it. All right, Jim, he sent me a quality goaltender and Lorne Mulligan. Peter was a defenseman, right, Stubley? And of course Scott Howson. And not to flatter Jimmy, but that kind of snowballed into the fact where we ended up with a relationship with the Minnesota North Stars. Lou Nanny sent me 4 or 5 players. And I had a relationship with Keith Allen, who was the general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers, and of course with Jimmy and Bill Torrey with the Islanders. So about that time, 81, 82, 83, 84, you know, and guys like Dirk Graham, who I had, and he was drafted by. He was drafted at the same time, I think, Doug Wickenheiser, Jimmy?
Yeah.
And they both played in Regina. And Dirk got off on the wrong track, and he was sent to Fort Wayne, and we got him. And I got him, Dirk, playing with Howson. And Dirk ended up scoring 70 goals in the 1970-71 season. And of course, we won the regular season championship, and we won the playoff championship. But just that, and it's, you know, I'll take some credit for it in terms of clarifying the issue, what was wrong with the team, and what was wrong with the culture, and focusing on what we needed to, and executing what had to be done. And but had an awful lot of help from the NHL.
Bill, how did you decide to call them the Gold Diggers?
It wasn't my call. They were the Goaldiggers before I got there. But I always tell the story about what the hell his name? The owner of the LA.
Jack Kent Cook?
Jack Kent Cook. Jack Kent Cook said, you know how to become a millionaire in hockey? He says, you start with 50 million and lose 49. And of course, in 1981, you know, we took that team and, you know, we won 53 games the first season out of 80. 4 guys with over 100 points. And, you know, Toledo was a Fortune 500 haven. I mean, we had DeVilbiss, we had Goodyear, we had the Jeep Motor Corporation, we had Owens Illinois, but we just you'd think the record we had in that time. But mind you, if there's any Canadians, well, there are a lot of Canadians here, I'm sure, but or even the Americans. In 1981, they were paying 19% on a Canada savings bond. I'm sure George Warby, you remember that, don't you, George? And but so it was tough. It was a tough time. But I have no regrets. It was a good learning experience. But I'll tell you this, without any reservation, I could not be a coach. I just absolutely could not be a coach. I just never, ever could accept the inevitability of defeat. And I damn the Army for that. But anybody who's coached the game for a long time, like Scotty Bowman and some of the great coaches, I don't know how they do it, but what we got?
The military.
Any questions? I love questions.
the military has played a huge role in your life. Obviously, your own training, your relationship with Mr. Campbell, who was famous for being a lawyer after World War II for the Canadian military. But also, you played for the Turner Cup, and a lot of people, probably this room, people know who Joe Turner is, but a lot of people don't. A Canadian who was killed overseas and never played in the IHL because the IHL started the year after he was killed. What was it like for people that were in the IHL playing for the Turner Cup that didn't have a relationship with him? Was it meaningful, or
With who?
With Joe Turner? Did that mean anything that you were playing for the Turner Cup, or was it just you were playing?
Well, Joe Turner was born in Windsor. He was a Windsor boy, and he played in the Michigan-Ontario Hockey League, which was a forerunner to the IHL. And he was. Matter of fact, Jim, he was in the Detroit's chain.
Yeah.
And he was a goaltender. And a matter of fact, he played in Indianapolis, but he played one game for the Detroit Red Wings. And in 1942, Joe Turner, of course, so he was well known in the Detroit, Windsor area, you know, and it was considered a leap of you know, patriotism for him to join. So he joined the Canadian Army. And he was in 1943. He was killed in Germany, and the like Fred Huber, he called it Jimmy, but Jimmy knows everybody that I know. Fred Huber was a statistician for the Detroit Red Wings, and he was the one really that recommended that the trophy be named the Turner Cup. And as long as I was commissioned, it was never hinted, inferred that it should ever be changed. And in 1974, I had it changed. I had it changed to the configuration that it's in now. And we put everybody. We researched it. We put everybody's names on it, the coaches' names on it. And the Turner Cup is now in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Good. There's a question down here.
I was gonna. Who was your coach during that?
My coach was Billy Inglis.
Okay.
Billy was a little guy. He played for Peterborough, I think, or Pembroke, and then he was signed by LA. No, he was in the Canadian organization, and I think he was. In '67, he was traded in the expansion draft to LA, and then I think he went to Buffalo, and he coached a few games in the NHL, not too many. But Jack Riley, who former general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he was now the commissioner of the IHL. When I was running the Goaldiggers, he recommended Bill Inglis to me, and I interviewed Bill. He's a good guy. He did a good job, and we had it wasn't a cozy relationship, but I did that on purpose. You know, like Mr. Campbell once said to me, I said, Mr. Campbell, what do I do now? I'm a commissioner now. I got a phone call at 11:15 last night. I'm the commissioner. He said, you treat everyone equally. And it's your job to ensure that all your owners and everyone in your league enjoy that equality unmolested. He said, don't create any cabals or conspiracies where you've got a permanent majority on your side all the time. He said, if it goes full circle, everyone will have a chance to get a shot at you. And he said, how do I treat him? He says, you treat him like a campfire. He says, you don't get too close, you get burned. Don't stay too far away, but fire a bomb. That's what he said. I'll never quote him. That's what he said.
So while you were commissioner, violence in hockey really took off in the NHL. Big Bad Bruins, the Broad Street Bullies, and that your league was not immune from it. What was it like to be commissioner when you knew you had to have some violence in the league to put people in the stands? But how did you regulate it? How did you manage it?
Well, first of all, as I said, we kept 8 players, and 4 of them were Islanders. Well, Scott Housen, or no, we got Dave Falkenberg. Let me get this straight on. Mike Grader, Dave Falkenberg, Dirk Graham, Mike LaBianca, Paul Tarbellini, and Blake Stevens.
They were from Lunani, Bill.
Yeah.
Minnesota.
And now, we didn't have, well, we had Mike Grader, he was a Philadelphia chattel, if you like. Dave Falconer, he had 200 minutes, but he scored 34 goals. And Gord McFarlane, I think he played in one of the Ivy schools. And Rod McNair, he was a Philly chattel, I think, but I don't think he ever played in the show, but he was from Sudbury, Ontario. But like when we paired Dirk Graham with Scott Housen, Jimmy, and nobody touched Housen.
Well, at that level, they were like Geiserman and Fedorov.
Exactly.
Just to give you an example.
But Dirk Graham, I think he was in 3 fights.
Yeah.
And he wasn't like a Probert, a Bob Probert,
right.
but he was.
He was a good all-around player. He could fight.
He was a boxer. And I remember we were in the second year. We were in the semifinals in Fort Wayne, and you probably a goaltender by the name of Wayne Bishop took on Dirk, and Graham just annihilated him, and we went on to win that series and win the championship. Now I get to be the commissioner. I figured it was a bad league, you know. Ivan Prediger, and it wasn't good. So I figured, and a lot of it had to do with stick work. So I made a recommendation to the Board of Governors. I said to make helmets mandatory. Now, this was in 1970, and I recommended it at the fall meetings. And in 1971 and 72 season, we made it mandatory. The first professional league to make helmets mandatory. I figured, you know, this would have an impact on, you know, the fighting and what have you, and the brawling. And it did. It really did. But the following year, and 3 of the general managers came to me and said, you know, the attendance was bad. I mean, it wasn't great. And he said, this is affecting our attendance. We want to make helmets optional. Now, I disagreed, but I said, oh, that's fine. Well, you got a constituency here, you know. So I put it on the agenda, so they made it optional. So guess how many people didn't wear helmets the next year? I'll tell you. Only 8% of the players wore the helmets the following year. And, you know, so they were kind of sitting smug that they got over, like put one over on me type of thing. I said, let me tell you this. I remember Kenny Elliott, you know, Frank Gallagher, and Jerry DeLeese, and all these owners.
Ren Blair.
Yeah, Ren. I said, what if we decided to make the jock cups, you know, say optional? Okay. Oh, Christ, I'm not going to make jock caps. So you're nice. I said, that just goes to tell me that you have more concern about your family jewels than you do your cranium. But anyway, I got Freddie Blackburn to be my referee in chief, And I worked out a deal with Scotty Morrison to have NHL officials, trainees, young guys come down. We had 6 of them. And I think just the fact that the notoriety that it was an NHL trainee, it had a psychological effect on some of the coaches. Well, you know, these guys are really good. And things dampened down, and you know, the games were a little shorter. We always try to keep them under 2 hours and 40 minutes, and the penalty minutes. But by the time I left on December the 15th, 1978, I thought the league, and I think that Jimmy and the guys agree that it was, you know, Detroit sponsored Port Huron, and we had we started to get a lot of support from the NHL and recognition. But I think it worked out pretty good.
I'm curious if you had any cooperation with Hockey Canada or any involvement with Hockey Canada when you were commissioner of the IHL. Were the leagues, the organizations, were they compatible, or was there a us-them philosophy?
It was us and them. There was at that point, I'm not going to say they were arrogant. I'm not going to say that, but you know, they had the flag on Mount Everest, and they knew everything, so they didn't want to hear anything from you.
Sad. When you were at the Olympics in charge of U.S. officiating, did you have involvement with Badger Bob Johnson? Or what would the relationship be?
Okay, well, okay, so actually, I never got to meet, have anything to do with Bob Johnson in my final year in the United States, so in Madison, Wisconsin. We had a volunteer coach at the University of Wisconsin for the 2 years that I was there. And Johnson, Bob came in 1968. But as I was a director of U.S., well, it was called A-House at the time, American A-House.
Amateur Hockey Association.
Amateur Hockey Association of the United States. And I, as the commissioner of the IHL, I was named to the directorship, and I was on the finance committee, the rules committee, and a junior hockey committee, which I really enjoyed. And the president at the time was Mr. Thayer Tutt. He owned, if anybody's been to Colorado Springs, they know Cheyenne Mountain and the Broadmoor Hotel. Well, he owned both. And he invited me to attend meetings, and well, in '76, he invited me to go along and supervise the officials and make recommendations to their executive committee. But the most fortuitous thing that happened to me at the '76 Olympics in Innsbruck was that I ran into a fellow by the name of Ralph Mellenby. Now, Ralph, as you may know, was the executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada for many, many, many years. And he was there working for Roone Arledge. He was ABC, Wide World of Sports, and they televised the Olympics. Of course, you'll remember that Canada and Sweden didn't go to the Olympics that year because they weren't allowed to send pros. But I really got hooked. I mean, he took me into the truck and the production crew and the effects and stuff like this. And I really, really got involved and enjoyed. So two good things came out of it. It was the opportunity to go to the Olympics, get involved on the world stage with the International Ice Hockey Federation. I followed that up, and I enjoyed that work. But that was a very significant growing year for me, the 1976 Olympics.
Did that give rise later to you getting involved in instant replays?
Yes, it did, as a matter of fact. You know, here's another guy, Jack Stanfield. Anybody know the Stanfield brothers? Jack Stanfield was working for Prime Network, and I worked out a deal with Pro-Am Sports in Detroit. And got our athletic directors to agree to give me 3 nights, and we organized a CCHA, Central Collegiate Hockey Association, game of the week. And in the negotiations, I kept the rights. The CCHA kept the rights to bicycle these telecasts anywhere we wanted. PASS was only interested in the Michigan, Ohio, Indiana area. So what we did, you know, just from learning from Melanie, you know, like academia, they're so easy to get along with, you know. You know, leaving the IHL Board of Governors and going to a athletic director's meeting is like, you know, going to a retreat in a Mormon community. There's nothing to do. But anyway, I got them to put shotgun mics over the net, you know, to pick up the sound, you know. They were a little worried. Academia was a little worried about some of the stuff that might be said. Got them to put directional mics just outside the boards, like 6 inches behind the board on a little thing. I mic'd the coaches, mic'd the referees. Some of the referees ripped them off and threw them on the ice. I'll never forget Red Berenson ripping it off and throwing it on the ice. But we, in the end, with Prime Network, we penetrated, we had 49 million penetrations, including 8 million on the Madison Square Garden Network, Sports Channel New England, Sports Channel Chicago, Nesson, New England Sports Network, and a few other independent cable companies, and even had 2 PBS stations, one in Baltimore and one in Washington. And it was very successful, and it really increased the profile of NCAA Division I college hockey. As you probably know, evidence of the fact that I think, and Jimmy knows more than me, but I think there's over 25% of the players in the National Hockey League now, Jimmy, are former NCAA Division I college players.
At least that, if not more.
Yeah.
There are 60 Division I college programs now in the U.S.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about that is, that's how many CHL teams there are in Canada. We have 60 major junior A hockey teams in Canada.
Yeah.
The U.S. has 60 Division I college programs in the U.S. So there's going to be a lot of players coming.
Well, what we did, we were able to, I guess, at the time, you say 60 was, but when we got there, was 52 or 53. And we decided to bring in Alaska Fairbanks and Alaska Anchorage, which are 4 time zones away. But we made a deal with them. We had 2 schools against it. Notre Dame were against it, and Western Michigan University were against it because of, you know, class time, just class time. So we made an arrangement where a team would go up every other year. Like say, the kid would go up as a freshman, he'd go up as a junior, or he'd go up as a junior, he'd go up as a senior, or he'd go up as a sophomore, he'd go up as a senior. And then we got them to pay all the ticket fare, round-trip tickets for all the teams. And we actually televised the game. I got passed to go up there. And we televised the game that Western Michigan played up there. It was difficult. We had to get a remote from Anchorage. And it was, I remember we had to send it up to a satellite and bring it down into Seattle, and then Seattle back up. And anyway, but we got national coverage of that game. And then we brought in, so that was the 2 Alaska teams. And we got Notre Dame, which was huge, and they're back now in the Big Ten Conference, and it's huge. And I brought in Northern Michigan, retrieval. I'm having a problem. Anyway, the television played a big part in elevating the profile of college hockey. Really did.
So it wouldn't be fair to talk about your career without bringing up the IHL, the relaunch of the Eastern Hockey League, which was a 2-year endeavor for you. You're commissioner for, I think, the 2 years of its existence.
Yeah.
Did something happen that it wasn't successful, or was it just never going to succeed.
Let me give you a little lead into it. I had just been either fired or resigned, depending which side of the lawsuit you're on. I left the IHL unwisely, as it turned out, and I was recruited by the Ontario Hockey League. And I called Mr. Cannell, like, what do you think, Mr. Cannell? He said, it's less than a lateral move. Don't do it. He says, besides, they're a bunch of rascals. And all my heart was at, oh, I mean, junior hockey in Ontario? Are you kidding me? This is every boy's dream, 16-year-old dream. I remember saying, if you're bent on doing this, this is what you're going to do. I said, yes, sir. He said, you're going to have a personal services contract from every team, signed by the owner of every team. And you're going to have a 13th contract signed by the chairman of the board of governors of the Ontario Hockey League, would happen to be Howard Darwin. So I ended up with 13 contracts. I remember we went to the law offices of Borden and Elliott in Toronto, big law firm. I had a stack of contracts that high. Okay, now, fast forward to my next meeting. They present me with all these changes to the Constitution, which significantly emasculated the terms of reference of a commissioner, you know, like calling executive session, chairing meetings and stuff like this. So I got the committees, I said, well, that's not the Constitution you gave me when you hired. So you're going to need to change this and change that. Not a lot. So we get to, I just signed up a deal with LCBO, and I had a pending agreement with, it was Cooper Canada at the time, later became CanStar, Jim, CanStar, and we had the All-Star game in Sault Ste. Marie in January 1979. Now, and I've arranged to have Billy Wirtz, the chairman of the NHL Board of Governors, Tommy Ivan, Tony Esposito, who was a native, to go to the game. And anyway, I got this. I got a call from Bill Wirtz. He said, Phil, he says, I'm sorry, Kanish, he says, but O'Hare's closed. There's nothing around here. He says, the only thing that is open is Midway Airport. So I'm in negotiations, with Molson's Canada. That's who I'm negotiating. So I call Graham, I forget his last name. I said, we're close to closing this deal. I said, but I said, one little favor would do it. He says, what's that? I said, I need your corporate jet. Really? I said, yeah. I said, what do you need it for? I said, I need it to go to Chicago, pick up Bill Wirtz, stop in Toronto, pick up Ed Chenouf, who was the commissioner of the Western College Hockey League. And it happened. And we flew in, and I said, I want to land at noon. I want the mayor and council of Sault Ste. Marie there. And they agreed. So we land there, there's the mayor, and we go to we have a banquet. Bill Wirtz is the speaker. I've got the Archbishop of Algoma sitting beside him, and then me. And I start, and then I speak to all the players. And I start talking about education. I'm talking about your family. I'm talking about faith. And I'm talking this, and I said, if anybody ever has any difficulty with anything, I said, you give me a call. The players. I talked to the players. I didn't know it, but the OHA were attending the meetings. And I couldn't believe how much influence the OHA, Ontario Hockey Association, had over It was then called the Ontario Major Junior Hockey League. I changed the name to the Ontario Hockey League. In 42 days, I changed the name. And they took me aside and they said, well, I opened the meeting. There had to be 70 people in there. And they said, well, I said, I'm going to chair this segment and you're going to discuss these changes that are going to be made. And I went down to the lobby, the Holiday Inn. 3 guys come down. Sherry Basson, anyway, 3 of them come down. And they said, we can't do it. And I said, well, that's not what we agreed to. And said, well, you know, you've got to work with us. I grabbed my briefcase. I went up to the hotel. I checked out. There just happened to be a plane leaving for Toronto. I took the plane to Toronto. I went to Windsor. I get home and my wife said, what's going on? I had just had a call from the London Free Press and they said, you resigned. And anyway, I went home. I've never told this story. So I call the lawyer that put all these 12 contracts together. He became the Ontario Attorney General. Just forget.
Murtry?
Who?
Big Murtry?
No, I'll think of his name. He said, what's going on? He said, I'm reading the paper, you're resigning. He says, did you resign? I says, I don't know. What did you do? I said, I just left. He says, did you tell anybody you resigned? I said, no. He said, did you write anything down and said you resigned? I said, no. He says, you be in your office in Toronto at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I go into my office. Open there. About 10 minutes later after opening, in comes Howard Darwin, Ottawa. Earlman Tagano he ran the London team. Of course, Darwin owned both teams, incredible conflict of interest. And Sherry Basson. And they said, Sherry Basson says, what are you doing here? I said, I work here. So they left, and I guess they went up and they changed the bank accounts and everything else. So I called, so what had his name? The lawyer. Must have been a good one. And he said, well, I told him what happened. He says, you go back in. He says, you keep going in until they change the locks. So I go in the next day. I had a meeting, I remember, with the LCBO, and I went to the meeting. I go back. The 3rd day I go in, I can't get in. So I call him and he says, fine. He says, now we're going to sue their ass. So we sued, and you're researchers. I'm going to tell you a story. I go to the Canada Cup in February 1979. And I'm friends with Bruce Norris, as you know, John, Billy Wirtz, and Harold Ballard. And they're kind of talking around. And of course, I tell Bruce what had happened. He says, come on over. And I see Billy and Harold. I said, Jesus Christ. Harold owns the Toronto Marlboros, and I'm seeing him. I'm suing him. Now, he's probably going to be living. So they go over, and I say, what do I say to Harold? I said, Harold, Mr. Ballard, I'm sorry. I said, but I had to take the position that I've taken, you know. And he looked at me and said, don't worry about it. He says, they're a bunch of assholes. That's why I don't go to their meetings. It's exactly what he said. So, now, I was about to do my depositions, you know, or discoveries, as they call them in Canada, from the Borden and Elliott lawyer. So I gave it an opportunity to put that into the testimony. What Harold Ballard's saying, that they're a bunch of assholes, that's why he doesn't go. And it's in the testimony. So 2 weeks later, my lawyer calls me and says, they want to settle. They want to settle. So that's a long way of getting into your question. but I'll get there. I settled. I got $60,000. I was told not to say that, but that's, I'm sure there's a statute of limitations to that. I got $60,000. I was there for 42 days. So I called John Ziegler to answer your question. A little late, but I said, I'm out of a job, John. And he said, I said, well, you said now this is June, and they're having the June meetings of the NHL Congress at the Queen Elizabeth Hotel in Montreal. And he says, if you want a job, you're going to go here. I said, do you think I'll be blackballed? You know, I sued the Ontario Hockey League. He says, no, come on down. He says, come into the ante room, and I'll be there, and I'll see you. So I go to the Queen Elizabeth Hotel, and the draft is just about to start. You might have even been there, Jimmy.
I was.
Ziegler says, follow me. So I'm like standing off like this. The lights start flickering like this. And John, I see John, everybody's going. I says, he goes like this. John goes like this. So I follow him. He gets, there's the dais. John's there, and I'm here. I got up, and John gets 1 foot up on the block. He turns around like this, and he shakes my hand. He says, good to see you, Bill. You know, 3 hours later, I was the commissioner of the Eastern Hockey League. They had 4 teams, Utica, New York,
Erie.
good, John. Utica, Erie, Richmond, and Norfolk. 4 teams. So you can't have a team with 4 teams, a league with 4 teams. So I get on the phone and I call Bruce Norris. And as you don't remember, Jimmy, Teddy Lindsay is general manager at the time. Okay.
Right.
So I called Bruce and I said, I got to get 2 more teams. Could you help me? He said, would you put a team in Johnstown? And he said, look, Bill, Bruce says to me, look, if you can convince Teddy to do it, I'll do it. So I called Ted Lindsay, and he said, all right, we'll do it. So they sent Al Blades down to be the general manager, Jim.
Right.
And so I got Erie. So I figured, I got 5 now. So I go to Lou Manny. Lou's the general manager of the Minnesota North Stars. And I got Louis, he sent one eye. Glenn Somnor down and looks over the situation. Then he sends down his
Mariucci? Mariucci, John Mariucci?
John was there. John eventually did come down. But anyway, he said, we'll put a team in here. I wanted $100,000 from him. He said, we'll put in $50,000 a team, and we'll put in a coach, Gene Ubriaco. Does that ring a name with anybody? Gene?
Yeah.
Ubi, as they call him, Gene's the coach. And I got to get $50,000. So what do? I go to the mayor.
What city is this? Utica or Johnstown?
No, I got Utica, I got Erie, I got Norfolk, I got Richmond, I got Johnstown, and now I'm working on Baltimore. Anyway, it's the mayor. His name will come to me, but he later became the governor of Maryland, Bill Schaefer. And I told him, I walked in with 2 press releases to Schaefer. I gave them to his secretary. I had a meeting with him. One was like he could be Christ. And the other one is that, you know, I'm getting ahead of myself. He promised me he would do it, but he reneged. So I got ahead of myself. So after he reneged, I went in with those 2. I left him with the secretary. And she said, well, Mr. Schaefer can't see you today. And I said, well, he's going to walk out this door, and I'm going to wait here until he walks out. I'm sitting right in this chair, and I'm not moving. I was there for 3 hours. 3 hours, secretary comes up, she says, oh, Mayor Schaefer would like to see you, Mr. Beagan, come on in. So I, oh, Bill, I really need to see you. He said, here, yeah, I made the arrangements, everything's set, I got the money. So I called Louis and I said, I got the money. So I came down, we had a press conference, introduced Ubriaco, and John Kerr was the controller for Minnesota North Stars, and I think he's the controller now for Philadelphia. But he came down too. He was the
money guy.
money guy. So we had the money. So now we've got a league, 6 teams. So I said to Bruce Norris, I said, well, where in the hell do I set up a headquarters? And he says, you know, I spent some time in Virginia Beach. You should go down there. So I called Ziegler, John Ziegler, and I said, do you know anybody in the Ziegler? He said, yeah, I do. He says, I know a guy that works for the Kodak Corporation, and he has a condo there. So I lived there for 2 years. We had a family problem. My family's in Windsor. My daughter's 17, out of control. My son was 11. I was an absentee father. The league wasn't going well at all. Just wasn't going well. So I came back. I brought basically the office to Windsor. I wasn't even being paid. But I said, I'm going to see this through till the end of the season. I never got a check after January. But John Ziegler invited me to the NHL All-Star Game was in LA that year. 1983. And John Ziegler invited me. I lost my train of thought.
So you went to Windsor, you
took out the league on
Windsor.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I went to the All-Star Game in LA, and I came back to Windsor, and I decided that I wasn't going to go back. But they had got together. John Caruso was the owner with Nick Polano.
Yes.
And in Erie, and so I was effectively out of a job then in 1981. So that's my history in the Eastern Hockey League, and then of course 2 months later I was a part owner of the Toledo Goaldiggers.
Now, I've got 2 more pages of questions. Unfortunately, Bill flashed me a 2 sign, which I think he meant keep going, you've got 2 more pages. But, and I'm afraid it doesn't mean that. I think it means that we're running out of time. I've asked a lot of questions. Is there anything from the floor? Dan?
Bill, do you know Bob Naden?
Pardon?
You know Bob Naden?
The referee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of mine. I just did a meeting with him last week. He was discussing his career. He did some big games, Memorial Cups, things like that. But one of the questions I asked him, because I looked at that, the '64 Memorial Cup, the Marley team, they were really great and all that stuff. He was a liney in those games. They brought in a guy from Quebec to referee. But in the last game, one of the linies was John D'Amico. He did the game. So I said, I see all these guys that are going, why didn't Bob Naden go to the NHL? So of course, he gives the reason. He said, money. He was making more money teaching than he was doing that. Now, is this, getting back to you, would this be like you refereeing?
Yeah, I made, Macaulay, Lewis, and Newell, and we made $6,000. I was making more money in the Army. And my first year I spent Christmas Day with John Macaulay in the Roadway Inn in Fort Worth, Texas. And the following year I was away again at Christmas. It was just, NHL, no home life. I loved what I was doing, but I wasn't geared, I think, to be. As a matter of fact, Scotty Morrison attended my induction into the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame, and I queued up a question and got someone to say, Bill Beagan, or how did you rank Bill Beagan as an NHL referee? And Scotty said, he was second. He said, well, who was first? He says, everybody else was tied for first. Anyway, before you get the hook and the broom, I shared some some stuff that I've never shared with anybody else, but I was thinking about your research work, and I thought I would let it all hang out. And thank you for this opportunity to address you, and welcome to Parry Sound, and hope your meetings go well.
I'd like to mention in closing that one of our SIHR members, Paul White, has written the biography of Mr. Bill Beagan, and it's out of circulation, but you can still get it at Aid Books and Amazon. And after Bill's presentation today, I'm sure it's a good read. I'm definitely going to pick up a copy. Thank you, Bill.
I have one other thing, a historical purpose. Incidentally, all my files are in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Craig Campbell came up and picked them all up, and but this is, I've got a copy for people who maybe you'll remember the investigation into professional sports. That was in 1976, and this is my statement to the Select Committee on Professional Sports, the United States House of Representatives. And there's a copy, and it's very, very, very interesting. And if there's anybody that's interested in this letter for historical purpose about Mr. Campbell, I'm going to leave these here as well. So,
Bill, before you go, I have something pretty special. You can now wear, since you made it press, you can wear a pin for the Society for Hockey Research. And since you got excited about that research, here's the latest edition of our Hockey Research Journal.
yeah.
Thank you very much. You're really